So yeah, that's just one of the songs that so well represents what's happening in these books. And it just turned out that way. One could say, the old saying that if you're walking around with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So I am totally into country music. I delighted that I did some of the primary broad scale um, documentation of Black people in country music. And I honor that as part of our heritage. But who knew it would turn out that this is the music that perfectly explains these Black family heritage books? But again, maybe it's because this music is so in my head, in my soul, just in me, it's only natural that I would find its applicability much more easily than others would. So yeah, just um, fleshing out all of the ways these books relate to our music is also part of it. So again, we're debuting on December 9th. So there's a 1 hour recording that goes with that, but there are so many YouTube recordings. We're just going to have a ton of them on all these different topics. And there's one that um, I just love, again, when people are writing in these books, they're recounting wonderful times at home in ancestral homes. And they talk about the songs sung in the family. Again, be it sitting around the fireplace or be it in church, etc. And there's a nice presentation that's a good compilation of some of the songs we write about in our books, and then listening to those songs as well as listening to the songs that help explain the books themselves. So yeah, before we move on, Bilal, is there anything else you wanted to share on this idea about the death part? I really do want to engage in that kind of conversation. Do you want dear Dr. Ozie to put that on our schedule for a topic um early next year or something to think about if we do want to go deeply into that, because that's a big issue. And then again, making sure, Dr. Hall, did I explain that relationship to you well enough? Again, this is a genre that has never been separated out before as a genre studied this way. Again, some of the big books like Roots and others are critiqued as, from a literary critic stance, from a genealogy stance in terms of records. What I found is that there's very little evidence, even though the how-to books sell, there's very little evidence that the writers of the Black genealogy books um, actually follow everything that's in the how-to books, like standards of research and all of that. As we all know, the one we're celebrating most, Roots, um, now is in the category of a fictionalized genealogy because so much of what was quote unquote documented in the formalized ways was not. And that relates to what we were talking about in terms of communing with the dead. People get the stories in the various ways we do. We were talking about epistemology last time. We know that our sources of knowledge, what we trust as sources of knowledge, vary. And yeah, that knowledge comes from not just documents, two or three sources that some outside entity said is the way it must go. There is a lot of that, but we are not limited to that. There's all kinds of documentation. If you got it in your dream from Aunt Rose that such and such is the deal, you might decide to put in your Black family heritage book that such and such is the deal. That's just how we roll.
Yeah, Dr. Foster,
Yes.
just want to thank you for the presentation.
Oh,
Very,
you're so
very
welcome.
well documented. I do want to say that I've experienced through my family talking to the dead, having conversations, having dreams or whatever. So that's something I've been researching in the past as well.
Well, good. Well, it would be great to, again, let's have a recorded conversation. Let's get it on the site. Let's encourage us to delve into that more. Maybe what I'll do is pull out dozen or so books that really do a lot of that and do another presentation. Like I said, I just did one for the American Anthropological Association that really hones in on the fact that we do this in our books. But if we want to delve deeper into it, I could pull out some other books that are great examples too. So
I would
yeah.
I'd love to see that. Also, December 2nd, give me the information on that.
December 9th.
Okay.
So just go to, you ready? Well, maybe, yeah, Ozie will email it out, I guess,
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
but
but
it's HBCU
wait a minute. Hold on. I'm writing it down.
Mhm.
HBCU.
Heritage Home dot
Okay.
com.
Okay. HBCUHeritageHome.com. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
it's on some of the documents already sent out. Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. But it's December 9th.
Right. Got it.
Correct.
Yeah.
That would be next Tuesday.
I have another question in terms of um, in I don't know if you looked at these other um, sources, if you'd call them sources, but tell me the distinctions between the archive that you're doing right now, and let's say, for example, the Freedmen's Bureau records, they had something called the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands, and it documented slave stories between 1865 and 1872. And then there's another body of documents called the Federal Writers Project. And it's basically slave narratives that was done somewhere around 1930. And it had like interviews with like 2,300 formerly enslaved people. In terms of the stories in these two other sources, how are they similar? Do they follow the same basic principles, or have you looked at, the differences between these?
I've looked at a lot of the Freedmen Bureau records. I've looked at all of the um, WPA narratives and a whole body of other narratives. It turns out that, and you'll see this in one of the sort of overview videos or you distributed in advance. It turns out that some of the narratives um, sort of developed into family heritage books. In fact, the book or the serialized narrative, you know how early on many of our eventual publications were first serialized in newspapers. So the first thing that um, many people refer to as a Black genealogy, this is not American though, this was in France, um, is actually one of the slave narratives. The main point about it is that this is the first one where the white ancestry was acknowledged. And that's part of what makes this a family story. So it's not just again, a horror story. It starts the generational genealogical story. So there's a huge connection between the narratives and the records. Again, what's in the Freedmen Bureau records is just like what's in, I mean, not just like, it's not the same data, but it is a data source, just as are the census or land ownership documents or any kind of documents we use. So people do in these books sometimes use documents like that. Not always. It's just beautiful how there's just such a wide variety. You know, some have so many pages of documents, some have none. Some refer to documents but don't include them. Same with photographs. Some of them have lots of photographs. Um, and I will say, I I gave this example, but perhaps did not emphasize it enough in talking about how the stories of our ancestors will always say, you know, yeah, they made it so hard for us, you know, they restricted education and we couldn't go to this school and couldn't do that and couldn't do the other. But everyone has some great story about education being a significant value and playing a role. And a lot of them deal with the HBCUs. And that's why it's called HBCUHeritageHome.com. And you can see this combination of home, church, and school in that name as well, with heritage, if you will, representing the church. But again, it's this amalgamated new form of institution. We don't have the institutions we grew up with intergenerationally that built us as a people. We do have the stories of them, and we do have new ways of getting the same benefit from those institutions. This is a site that says it's not enough to say there's been a breakdown in the family. It's not enough to say there's been a breakdown in the church. It's not enough to say education sucks. What are you doing in your family? You've got extended family members who fall into every one of those categories of people who no longer have the homes, who don't have the great grandfather sitting around, walking with his stick, telling his stories. But they're in these books. So we can share these books with them and do it in all the newfangled ways, the games, um, you know, memory games, trivia games. It's interesting that even now, you know, maybe someone will invent this. We've got all these psychologists, people who know